Welcome back to Purus Tech Java tutorials. In this session, we are going to cover the final keyword, which is one of the non-access modifiers in Java, apart from the static, abstract, synchronized, and all these things. Let's see how we can utilize this final keyword and what we can achieve in Java in terms of variables, methods, and classes. So here I have written one example, that is the final keyword example class file, and I have one variable that is called the pi value. It's a double type, and in this main method I'm just printing the pi value is the pi value. So since this is a static variable, I can directly access without using any reference variable of any objects inside the static method. So if I'll run this one, it will print as null because we have used the wrapper type double. It's an object. So the object default value is null. Let's run. Okay, you can see the pi value is null here. So generally, what is the pi value? In if you are just calculating the circumference or area of a circle, we can use the pi value as 3.141. Since the pi value does not change, right? We can make this variable as a constant. So if I will not make this as a constant, what can happen? Here I can change at any point of time. Let's say the programmer by mistaken, he has changed the pi value is to some value 4.5. And if he will use this particular pi value, then he will get the wrong calculation. So let's just run it and see. So first I have initialized the pi value as 3.141 and later I have changed to 4.5. So the latest value is getting affected here. But our motto is we need to keep the pi value as the constant value. So I can use final keyword here to make this particular variable as a constant value. So by making this variable as final, we cannot change the value once it is initialized. This is the work of the final keyword in the terms of variables. This variable will become the constant and you cannot change further. So here it is giving the compilation error. Let's just delete this one and I can just use this 3.141 constant value in my program. So this is what exactly for the variable, final variable. Now one more thing we can see how we can initialize the final variable. Either we can initialize when we declare the value, or we can initialize through the constructor, or we can initialize through the block also. So I can just write like this, just uncomment this part, and here you can see the static and then bracket. So this is called the static block, and this static block can be used to initialize this pi value. Let's just delete this value from here, and you can see still this is working fine because this static block will be called whenever your class is loaded to the JVM. So if we run this one, it will print the same value 3.141, and here is the value. And if you see here in static initializer block, this particular sysout is coming first, and then in this main method sysout value. So whenever the class is loaded, first the static block is executed, and then if any instance initializer blocks are there, then only it will get called, and then the constructor, and then the method. So let me just write it here, the sequence. So the flow is first the static initializer block will get executed, and then the initializer block for the instance, and then the constructor will get called. So let's see this flow in the example. Let's just uncomment this statement to get one variable, that is instance level variable. So this is not a static level variable, this is just a instance, right? And this is per the class level variable. So I want one more final variable per instance, right? So this one I can define like this. I can, let's say define 30 for this minimum marks required. Let's say for the uh, school students or the college students, right? We can say that minimum marks required for the subject is 30. Otherwise, he will or she will fail. So to hold that kind of values, we can declare final and then integer minimum marks required. So here the value can be defined at the declared statement, or I can make use of a constructor here. So let me just comment this one and let's create a constructor and then integer min marks required and then min marks required equal to min marks required. Okay, now here just uncomment this one so that I will just utilize this constructor to pass some value. Let's say here 30. So I'm passing the minimum marks required as 30 here, and this 30 will get assigned to this particular instance variable. This is how I can do it. This is one more way. And the third way is I can define the value in a instance initializer block. So I can just uncomment this one and I can write like this. Just comment this one constructor part, and here let's just delete this. So as you can see, this is compiling fine. And let's add one more sysout for the minimum marks required. And then I'll just utilize this instance level variable and then dot minimum marks required. Let's try to run this. As you can see here, the first is static initializer block is getting called, and then the instance initializer is getting called, and then whatever we have in the main method, these two gettings printed. So pi value 3.141 and minimum marks required is 30. Let's try to change this minimum mark required here and see what happens. So final keyword example dot minimum marks required equal to 60. Then what will happen? It will give me the compilation error saying that we cannot assign any value to a final variable. So final variable, once it is initialized, it cannot be changed. Now to illustrate this flow, right? The static initializer block and then instance initializer block and then the constructor, the flow, how it is getting called. Let's just introduce here a default constructor and then uncomment this one. Let's not write this one and then say in constructor, and let's run this so that we'll see what is getting called when. This is one of the important interview question. So here you can see first static initializer block is getting called, then instance initializer block, and then the constructor, and then your method level sysouts. So here we cover the final variable. Let's try to see what happens if I make a method as a final. So let's just uncomment these things. Here I have defined one class print helper, and there is one more class HP printer helper, right, which is extending the print helper. So automatically this method is getting inherited to this particular class. Let's say here sysout print in A4 size paper. Let's say in case if we want that this method should not be overridden in any of the subclass further, then what we should use? We should use the final keyword here. So let's use final and see, and let's try to override this print A4 size method. Here public void print A4 size, and then sysout overridden method. Here you will get the issue like this method is final and you cannot overwrite. So this is the work of final keyword if we'll use in case of methods. Now let's come to the final keyword. If it is applied to the class, what happens? So if I'll just use final in the class level, then you cannot subclass this particular class further. That means no class can be a subclass of print helper. Let's just comment this one out. So let's see the error. Cannot inherit from a final class. So this is the work of the final keyword if you are using in case of the class. Hope this is clear. Thanks for watching this video and stay tuned.